I've been singing in the parish choir, the Mariehau parish choir, since we joined the parish about 1978, so many years. And I've known Olivia and her family through Our Lady of Fatima School. And I read about it in the parish newsletter and thought it would be an interesting experience, and it's proved to be very interesting.
For me, it's been a lot of fun, quite different than I imagined. Quite enjoyed. It hasn't just been learning the notes of the song and then just singing them. It's been a lot of different exercises, moving our shoulders and doing bow and arrows and all these different things, and picturing notes reaching to the sky and all that stuff. And I've never done anything like that before. I've never sung in a proper choir. So to me, it's been a really, just a fun, lively experience, and it's been a good opportunity getting to know some different people that I hadn't met before.
I think we're starting to come together as a parish, and perhaps particularly with the move of this church, and we had to go off-site for 6 weeks. And when we gathered at other churches and recognised people from Mariehau Parish or St Francis Assisi Parish, we felt one with them. We thought, we know them, even though we were at St Mary's or St Gregory's. And I thought that was the real sign of the parish, to my mind, coming together as one.
Well done. That was perfect that time. So sopranos, just watching on bar 22 for that.
I live in a small town, so I have a sense of community that generally revolves around the pub on a Friday night, which is maybe not the healthiest place for people to meet, but it's definitely, when you're in a small community, everybody has to support each other, particularly in the rural sense. I guess the last time we had a real sense of community was last year when we had that really major snow, and all of the farmers got together to help each other out for those that had stuck stock, and everything from people making sandwiches for the boys to take to lending dogs and shovels just to dig the snow. So yeah, that's probably before this, the last time.
I overall find often a lack of community spirit unless you are part of a parish here. I certainly am part of the school community where I work, but because people come from all over the place, it's a bit it's not as tight as it could be. And I recall when the quakes happened, and we strongly felt part of, not really of a local community, but just when friends came and we all took shovels and just went to the next house, and that was when everyone was kind of together, or you made muffins and we gave it to the firemen or something. There was that sense of community in a very large sense, but in a parish sense I haven't experienced that in a long time except in school.
I've sung in choirs before, but no one has actually told me how to feel the piece, to feel the music and feel what it conveys. It's quite deep. It's so deep. Music is so deep, and I mean the layering of the music and stuff. You explain everything to us. It was really it just opened up, this whole art of music that I've never really seen. Because if I was in a choir before, I would just sing and not really feel anything, but there's just so much more. There's just layers of stuff, so much depth.
What I really like is that when you make music, when you play music, if you sing together or whatever it might be, it's the moment. There is no past and there is no future. There is no thinking about the past day. There is no worries about what might come. It's only the moment, the music. It's now your little piece, other pieces coming to a nicer, good sounding, bigger one.
And it's that one chord, the chord that I'm talking about, that fills the entire space here, and that really makes you feel like, yes, this is just something that's bigger
Yeah,
than
yeah.
just you.
Actually, you can see this. Right, faces up. We're bringing you in over here. Notes again. Toes, up, toes, minutes.
I'm Father Simon Eccleton, and I'm the parish priest of this new parish here of St. Francis of Assisi in Mariehau in Christchurch, New Zealand. Following the 22nd of February 2011, the decision was made to amalgamate St. Paul's Dallington, Holy Family Burwood, whose church was also damaged and many people were moved, with Our Lady of Fatima parish here at Mariehau. And so we all came together. We were having dozens of minor earthquakes every day. And so the infrastructure of our buildings was being tested and pushed all the time. And the modern church here developed a crack which ran right through the concrete base of the church, and then it started to move. So when we could no longer use the Our Lady of Fatima church, we went into the hall and we reclaimed it as a church. The Bowls Club, which was a group that's outside, greater than simply our parish, were deeply put out that I should seek to reclaim that space as a place for our masses, and their suggestion was certainly use the church, use the building on a Sunday morning, but during the week we want to be able to use it. And the Our Lady of Fatima school said the same thing. Just stack the seats away once you've finished Mass, and we'll use it as a hall. And so we had to go through a process of understanding that, in fact, in the Catholic tradition, the sanctuary concept, the idea of a holy place set aside that's always there and always available, was something that some people came to with one of those, aha, yes, I've experienced that, I've called into a church. But for others, it was quite an alien concept, and so it seemed ungenerous for us to be doing that. And that caused real tension. It's important that we have a holy space, and that the architecture of the building becomes infused with the art and the music and the liturgy and the prayer of the people, and you feel it when you walk into a fitting place of worship. We need those spaces too, where we can support one another and have gatherings to encourage one another, and especially outreach into the community to draw people in and welcome them to make use of facilities. The work that you did in gathering us and inviting people to look back to their heritage, to the music that they knew, and then to prepare something new to be recorded as well, to meld in, was a wonderful and healing opportunity really for us to acknowledge our past, but to declare to the world, but more importantly to each other, we're moving ahead. And music crosses boundaries and builds bridges in a way that's quite unique. So in one sense, we discovered that the buildings are not everything, and that was a great consolation. But we came to a deeper realization as time went on that the relationship between the fabric of the gathering space and the people within is highly complex and quite beautiful.
I came to be here because I was at the Lyttelton market and I saw a poster, and I'm very familiar with the poster because it's a cathedral I love and sang in many years ago, so it's one of the sadnesses of Quake. I'm not naturally a tenor, so taking on a tenor was actually sort of a bit of a... and singing quite sort of on your own in a tenor part is actually quite is neat for me, because generally singing choirs with groups. And I think the way you introduce people who are non-singers was really, really lovely. I think that process of actually bringing people into music, which they aren't necessarily musicians and can actually attempt and be part of a music experience without being musicians, is fantastic, because that's really neat. And so it's not as though it becomes an exclusive thing; it becomes an inclusive process.
Making contemporary art in public space in Christchurch was an incredibly difficult thing to do, as it was an organic city changing constantly. In a city that has so much visual clutter, the last thing you need is another sculpture, kind of, because you have these giant buildings that are being torn down. You have so much going on visually that's even painterly at times. So I think things that intervened in space in different ways were more interesting. The performance-based projects, I think, have been the strongest because they don't try and make one visual one sculpture that will say it all, but they enable things to be opened up and for people's own experience for them to have their own feelings and their own experience of the work itself.
Singing in many choirs beforehand, but actually the thing about singing with a choir in a church is that, particularly in the Catholic Church, is you practiced for an event, and then the event happened, and you practiced for another mass, and that's how the masses were written for a particular for a Sunday. So it wasn't high performance, high art music. It was art that happened, and then you sang it, and rough as it was, and good as it was beautiful, and then you went on. And I love that aspect about sort of art, which was it was purposeful. Music like this, it's sort of like elevation in a very clean and beautiful way, and that's a fantastic thing, and it's sort of, you walk away and you feel sort of more light in your heart and better in your spirit. The Spirit of truth, the Spirit of truth.
You got that. That was really close. Okay, so what I really liked about that.
I think Voices Project is one of those projects that was exceptionally successful for those reasons of moving into space and allowing people to think about what that space meant, what it had been and what it potentially could be in the future, and the community that was engaged with that through not a material response, but something that was that you had to go on, by listening. You were listening to more than just the singing of a choir. You were listening to the histories and the memories of that site, and it was incredibly powerful, I think, for a lot of people to come in and not be looking at it, but to be acknowledging absence. There was still this constant change for people, and how they could access things. And so I think providing space for people to navigate that, not necessarily through new objects being placed there, but encouraging them to access a site in a different way, enabled them to think more deeply about how that city was changing and what was being lost and what did we need to try and fight to save.
I think the fact that we're here tonight is really interesting, isn't it? Because the community's been drawn around the music. And actually, Trudy and I don't know each other at all. I don't know you.
We met at the market today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, something has brought us together, hasn't it? Which is a remarkable thing. And that's the power of music. So much of life can be very much that we are split apart, into different parts of us, whether it's our mind or whatever else. But I think music brings together all of those parts, and it's embodied expression, embodied learning, and it's also a thing that you can share with other people in a really special way.
Okay, from the beginning, and just remembering on that key, it's really swelling onto that note and letting it blossom.
To think about my growing up in a church and country church, Protestant church, and all the singing and all of the, you go for the sermon and then you go for the cup of tea and the, and so that was a very clear community growing up. And as an adult travelling, and a lot of the communities I'm involved with are a little bit more dispersed, so there's a very different sense of community. It's like a community of minds rather than time spent.
Father Chris Friel, and I'm the administrator of the cathedral in Christchurch. It was the earthquake that happened in February the following year of 2011, and it was an uplift earthquake, which meant most earthquakes are wave earthquakes. This one lifted the city up by a metre, and when the city came back down again, another upward earthquake struck, which broke the back of all the horizontal infrastructure within the city, and anything built of masonry or stone, which was unreinforced, just could not cope whatsoever. The two towers in the front of the cathedral sheared off and fell into the courtyard. The dome ended up precariously slanted, and it was only because of reinforcing in the pillars within the church about 10 years prior to the earthquake that enabled the nave of the cathedral to stand up. Had that not been done, the engineers believe that the church would have collapsed completely. After the first earthquake, the September earthquake, they transferred masses to a building beside the cathedral, and Don came along with his choir and a few members of an orchestra, because that was the music that was set for that Sunday. And come hell or high water, that's what's going to happen. Everyone has mentioned to me that mass, that 10:30 mass, where we turned up, we were frightened, we were scared, and here we were at mass, which was in a different place, but here was the music. Here was the Mozart mass in B minor that was set for the day, and all the choristers were there, the parts of the orchestra were there, the musical director, Don Whelan, was there, and it just gave them a sense of normalcy once again, and that for many people was a very striking thing, and they said they were all in tears because of that, because they expected just to come to mass with no music whatsoever. After the February earthquake, nothing could happen in the cathedral, and the bishop decided to move all operations in the cathedral to another parish. It meant, unfortunately, that one parish, St Mary's Parish, no longer existed. We were sort of joined up as parishes, but there was a lot of ill will initially, and things had to change as well. Everyone knew that everyone was being put out. We were just fortunate that we still had a complete operating church, I think, because I've got many priest friends who were working out of their parish halls or a local church's hall, and every time you want to do something, you had to physically set up again, and after 4 or 5 years, it becomes a bit debilitating, really. So our parishioners, both Cathedral and St Mary's, knew underneath everything, underneath the niggles, that at least we've got a church, we've got our organ, we've got music, things are normal here. So if people now live in 3 or 4 suburbs away, you'll still see them back at church every Sunday because the parish is their home. They know everyone there, and they've walked the road with many other people who have been caught up in the same problem with destroyed homes and restarting again.